On our most recent China trip, we spent 5 days in Jinan, and just in the surrounding area alone, there's a lot of theme parks, whether you talk about the city itself, neighboring cities, or just a few train rides away. And within Jinan, we visited Jinan Sunac Land and Oriental Heritage in Jinan, and then we also took a train down to Fantawild and Tai'an. And as part of that day, we climbed. Well, we didn't climb anything. A lot of people were climbing Mount Taishan,
but we climbed around it.
We climbed around it. We took a cable lift up, and we did a little bit of climbing, but not a lot of climbing. And today we're going to be talking about those three parks. So Jinan Sunac Land, Oriental Heritage Jinan, and Fantawild Tai'an, or Fantawild Adventure in Tai'an.
It's funny, this is, of all the cities in China, this is the only one that has multiple parks with wooden coasters. There's 2 parks in Jinan proper. The 2 biggest ones, they each have a gravity group wooden coaster with timberliner trains. They have very different layouts and different approaches to their concept, despite being quite similar on paper. But and one of them is closed, and one of them hasn't operated in like a year. But aside from that, it is technically the only city you can find in China that has multiple wooden coasters at different parks, at least. Technically, Wuhan has 2 wooden coasters, but they never operate at the same time. So, like, sort of counts.
I guess a racing Woodie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A racing Woodie that does not race.
Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings. And today's episode is all about, like we already mentioned, Jinan. And Jinan is the capital city of the Shandong province. Beautiful city, famous for natural springs. We actually did go to one of the most classic natural springs in the city. And its proximity to a range of several historical mountains, such as Taishan and Tai'an, which we'll also talk about briefly today. And it boasts many amusement parks in the city, as well as several interesting parks in cities nearby. So there's going to be a separate episode about Guangcheng Euro Park, which is also close to Jinan. But that is its own episode because that park is like a whole situation. So we're not talking about that today. But today we're going to be talking about Jinan Sunac Oriental Heritage, Fantawild Oriental Heritage Jinan, and Fantawild Adventure in Tai'an. Now, to discuss transportation real quick, you can do all of this obviously from Jinan. We stayed in the center of Jinan, and both Jinan Sunac and Oriental Heritage in Jinan both have their own metro stops, so you can get there using the metro. Their metro system is relatively new, but it's quite good. We used it only once, but it's nice. And we could also use DD. I think we DD to the park the first time. We DD to both parks, but they both have metro stops if you wish to do that. Where we did them in one day, so we had kind of a tight connection, so we needed to DD it. And then we actually went to Jinan Sunac twice. We'll talk about that also today. And then for Tai'an, we took a train down to Tai'an and then took a DD to Fantawild Adventure. Now, then we took a DD to Taishan that spent the afternoon there. And then because Tai'an is relatively close to Jinan, we just took a DD back to Jinan. So it's all possible with DDs in the region. There's so much close by. If you want to shave off some time pretty quick, sometimes you can just take a train. But sometimes between going to the train station, taking the train, and then DDing from a train station, it's quicker to just DD point to point, which was the case for our return from Tai'an. And the first park we'll talk about is Jinan Sunac Land. Alex, what were your initial thoughts of this park?
So this park doesn't feel like the other Sunac parks for 2 main reasons. One, this park is in a great location and feels like lively and functional and is not suffering from an identity crisis like the other parks seem to be. This whole park kind of has a European Western theme. Everything either has kind of like a Camelot sort of magical theme or like a wilderness, like in the jungle, in the forest kind of theme. But it's all vaguely Western. And that kind of theme seems to respond, like people seem to respond really well to that in Chinese parks, because we've noticed a trend where like the parks in China that are themed to like Chinese themes don't seem to be as successful as like parks that are themed to Europe, like Quancheng Euro Park, for example, being right next to Oriental Heritage, but Oriental Heritage seems to really struggle with attendance, whereas Quancheng Euro Park seems to do okay. And then the other major thing is that unlike a lot of the Sunac parks, this park lacks like a major signature steel coaster. The Sunac parks are, I think, most famous to Western enthusiasts for their giant Intamin coasters. There's 5 Sunac parks that have signature custom like Intamin coasters. I guess technically now we're down to 4 because Chengdu Sunac Park, their augmented Tai'an clone is
Wait,
S7E148.
refresh me. Which 4 parks? And we have Nanchang, Hefei, Guangzhou, and then we had Chengdu, but Chengdu's dead. So what's the other park?
Chongqing, legendary twin dragon.
Oh, how did I forget? Of course, Chongqing. Yes.
And then the other Sunac parks, like the one that closed in like the super southwestern corner of China, and the one that's still open in Wuxi, they have signature B&M coasters, custom large-scale B&M coasters. But little Jinan Sunac Land, despite its immense success, does not have like a major thrill coaster. Every coaster in this park can be classified as a family thrill coaster, something that is like approachable for young children. Nothing at this park has a high height requirement. Nothing at this park is particularly tall or particularly fast, but it's home to 3 really nice, unique family thrill coasters, but nothing that goes upside down, no Intamins, no B&Ms. So even though this is a Sunac park and it feels like of all the Sunac parks to be the most successful, it's also the one that I think kind of flies under the radar the most for coaster enthusiasts, because on paper it lacks that big like focal point, tentpole, signature coaster thrill experience. But it does have a signature coaster in the form of Wooden Dragon's roller coaster, which is their custom GCI wooden coaster with Timberlander trains. It's just not like a super thrilling, super intense coaster.
So this park kind of highlights, I think, a more successful path of a Sunac Land, even though it still does the same thing. Actually, it doesn't do the thing where you pay per ride. This is one of the only parks left where you buy a ticket to enter and everything is just you wait.
We did buy a 3-day ticket for $15, so it was super cheap. But it's
100%.
Still a enter the park and then ride everything formula instead of...
Which is very interesting. You can tell how they pushed the entrance back, because it used to be an entrance in the shopping street and then the park, kind of like a traditional theme park, but then they just kept the shopping street open, whatever was left that's actually open, most of it's closed, and then you have the entrance kind of where the park splits off into several walkways. But the nice thing is to see here that despite some of the park being kind of isolated and dead and kind of crumbling, as the Sunac Park does, the actual shape of the park was much smaller and much more manageable. They didn't concern themselves with a super crazy elaborate theming. What it did to theming, it looks pretty good, because you have that little ship corner where the wooden coaster is, and like a giant shoot that's kind of themed to Efteling's Vier de Wonder, which is wild. But overall, the park was a much more manageable scope compared to the other ones, and that was kind of refreshing. I keep forgetting it's a Sunac Park, which keep talking about this. I'm like, oh, and that's right, it's Sunac. Because despite it being next to Sunac Mall, and it is a Sunac branded theme park, and they have the knockoff Butterbeer at the entrance, it just doesn't feel like a Sunac Park, and like in a good way for me.
But yeah, so the signature ride here, the ride that would still move the needle for coaster enthusiasts, despite it not being like a signature major steel coaster, is the Wooden Dragons roller coaster, which opened in 2021. It's one of the newer Martin and Vlemmick's wooden coasters in China. In fact, I think this was like the last new wooden coaster to open in China. We haven't actually seen a new one open since. There's one under construction at Fantasy Valley, the same park that has Da Vinci Ride Wing Coaster, but that's been sitting there.
So abandoned.
It could be a totally abandoned project. So as it stands, this is the newest wooden coaster in China, and it's like really cute. It's only 75 feet tall. It's 2,600 feet long, and it's not like an out and back coaster. It's sort of like it's a bit of a twister coaster, but it has a nice mix of like drops and airtime hills and then a directional change and then another nice airtime hill and then a directional change and another nice airtime hill. Everything sticks pretty low to the ground after the first drop. It just is a great, comfortable, smooth, but like not too smooth. Like it's really exactly what you want from a wooden coaster. It feels really well maintained. Has some great theme elements that like a wooden coaster you wouldn't normally expect. Like
yeah, it's got great character, and like Alex said, the themed elements for me were a highlight.
Definitely.
Because they use them kind of as like tunnel moments. So we've got several moments where you dive like a shipwreck or an animal skeleton, and even though it's called Wooden Dragons roller coaster because everything has to be a wooden dragon in China for some reason, it's really not themed to a dragon in any shape or form. It's like pirate themed. The whole area is pirate themed. Next to a pirate ship.
You're
next
like
to
kind of at the bottom of the ocean.
You know,
there's the shipwreck and carcasses of animals.
I want to say that of all the wooden coasters we've ridden, it's maybe the smoothest and one of the best coasters, wooden coasters in China. Is it the best, Woody? I'm not sure because I do enjoy so many of them. And there's a park in Wuhu that I really enjoyed at Woody too. But it has the potential to be the best. Like it is an airtime machine. It is smooth. It has character, has nice theming. It does things a little bit differently. It's not very big, but everything it does very well. Mm-hmm. It is a really consistent Woody. One of the best in China for sure, hands down.
Yeah, it may not be the most spectacular wooden coaster in China, but it's definitely the most like re-rideable of the ones we've ridden. And that's saying a lot considering...
And they offer these neck pillows.
Yes, you have little neck pillows that you can wear if you feel like your spine is going to sustain an injury. We're not big timberliner people, especially in China, because the dispatch thresholds for timberliners are particularly low.
But it was fine.
But this one has a pretty high dispatch threshold, so like it was actually a very comfortable experience, which is part of the reason why we went back after our Quanchang Euro Park day just for a couple rides on the wooden coaster, and then we went to the Sunac Mall for dinner. But yeah, this is a great ride. I could just see like American enthusiasts, like people who love wooden coasters, and people in Ace would just die for this ride. Like people who love a traditional family-friendly wooden coaster, people who love places like Knoebels would just eat this up. They would eat it up. It is such a great little coaster. That is just a beautiful example of what a modern wooden coaster should be. Go ahead.
And then the coaster lineup here is actually kind of fun because it's kind of untraditional, as where some of the Sunac parks seem to have more marketable rides, like big inverts or more loopers. So in the case of Wuxi, it's like 3 Western manufactured roller coasters, which is kind of unique. You know, you've got your B&M, your Zamperla, and your Mack launcher. But here it really feels again like kind of down, like understated, kind of more down low key. And so there's a coaster from Jinma here that is the Treasure Mine Car. Now, talk about understated, talking about keeping things low key. This thing doesn't do anything. It just decides to like leave the station with a really long piece of track, and it goes up a really slow lift hill, and then it goes to like 2 turns and a big straightaway, and then another turn, and then a lift hill, and then it somehow does that again, but with even more straightaways. And you think, like, we were looking at this ride from a distance, we're like, it really doesn't do anything.
You're like, what is this ride?
I was like, the satisfaction is just seeing the straight piece of track and filming a whole train on it at once. But then we rode it, and in a way, I was like kind of obsessed with this ride.
Enamored. It's so
because
cute.
It's just so different. It's so different, and it's just like, you know, there's decent speed to it. It's not like slow, but you just kind of coast through like big straight sections, and the theming is super arbitrary. It's like a couple of big mushrooms.
Yeah.
Is that the treasure that we found along the
Mushroom
way?
treasure.
No one will ever know.
Yeah.
Mushroom
it's just
treasure,
like the wooden coaster
overall,
where like the name of the ride has to be related to like something like Camelot, Excalibur, Knights of the Old
and the funny
Round
thing
Table,
is,
but it's like the theme is not actually related to that.
It takes up so much space, what it does. But what I found the funniest thing is the ride is like really smooth, except for there's one turn where like everyone just gets beats to shit. Like
and you
everyone's
can
like,
hear everybody.
It's like snapping, like shrieking, and then the rest of the ride is like really smooth. It is a fast little ride. We're gonna definitely post a video when this podcast comes out online. Look it up. It doesn't deserve much more time than that because we're packing 3 parks in one episode.
What's funny,
but it sure was a
my
ride.
last thing I'll say, I know you said it was Jinma, and I know we thought that it was Jinma, but I asked Candace.
Oh, sorry, am I incorrect?
No, it's not. It's not listed on Roller Coaster Database for some reason, but it's actually Beijing Shibaolai. I don't know why it's not on Roller Coaster Database, but
well, for a Beijing Shibaolai, it runs pretty well. But that would make sense. Well, no, but Beijing Shubalai did not do the spinner because the spinner is a Nanfang.
Is Nanfang. It's one of their only roller coasters.
Which is amazing. Nanfang, guys, is the unsung hero of Chinese amusement equipment because they do all the cool flat rides, all the cool flat ride videos you see, like the reinvention of the flying circus, or what they call Crazy Circus, or the all the other flat rides that they reenact,
the miniature version of the Zamperla Roto Shake that they sell. They sell a really nice like Vekoma Waikiki Wave style ride that like so many parks have these rides. They're like keeping these concepts, these flat ride concepts alive by building knockoffs, even though the original manufacturers don't make them anymore, or the manufacturer isn't even around anymore. But they also build a good roller coaster.
All of their flats are practically still running is a sign of their quality. And then we
100%.
rode our first ever, as far as I know, Nanfang Amusements Rides Company roller coaster. And this thing is just called roller coaster. And it is a spinning coaster. The cars are kind of inspired by the
Mauer spinner.
Mauer cars.
But like a train.
Except for, imagine, a train of 4 of them. And oh my God, they were so comfortable. The legroom was insane. The lap bar is almost like an intimate drop ride lap bar, like a really simple, just flat lap bar, except for it comes down from in front of you. And it was the smoothest, most comfortable spinning coaster I have probably ever been on. If these trains were on the spinner at Epic Universe, Werewolf had these trains, oh my God, I would ride it all the time. It was so comfortable.
Only Werewolf had these exact trains. It's so crazy.
Now, layout-wise, let's face it, it doesn't do a little ride on my train. It is just like 1, 2, 3 big turns in a helix, and then that's it. But we rode it twice because we liked it so much. One ride we spent a lot, the other ride we didn't spend much. But overall, I am personally a fan. It may or may not be like my most cherished ride at the park.
So cute. I loved it. Yeah.
I loved it.
So all 3 of the coasters are really fun little oddball rides. They also have a kiddie coaster that's a Jinma knockoff roller skater, and ironically their kiddie coaster is called Jungle Trailblazer, which is the name that all of the Fantawild parks use for their Gravity Group wooden coasters. So we have a park with a Gravity Group wooden coaster and a park called a park with a Gravity Group wooden coaster that also has a roller coaster called Jungle Trailblazer, but they're not the same. All the other Jungle Trailblazers are Gravity Group wooden coasters at their Fantawild parks, but Sunac just like took a peek over the fence and was like, Jungle Trailblazer, that's a great name for a coaster.
I know, it's so funny.
And they just attached it to their kiddie coaster that's in their little indoor park within a park. That also has a teeny tiny roller coaster called Royal Knights that's just like, the ride vehicle is like 1 across. Like it is super, and like I don't think I could physically fit in one of those if I tried. So but they had like a tiny, like a little log flume and some other flat rides and stuff in the little mini indoor area. But we just went in there to ride the Jungle Trailblazer Jinma knockoff roller skater. But yeah, this was a nice park. They were doing some enhancements and some like theme element expansion. The back loop of the park is like a zoo. We didn't go through there because like A, we didn't really have time. But B, park like zoos in China, like if you're trying to have a good time at a park in China, don't go to the zoo unless you're trying to get depressed
at Chimelong. Well, you're not even Chimelong anymore.
And then the park at the front of the park they have a flying theater, which we decided to do on our second night since like we were there. Quancheng Euro Park had closed for the day. We went and rode the wooden coaster, a couple rides, and then we went off to dinner. We're like, let's do the flying theater real quick, while we're here. It's a really cute, like vaguely Hogwartsian sort of feel on the inside. And then the theme was just like flying over Shandong, which was really fun. Like,
yeah, the nice thing about Sunac parks, if you do a bunch of them, all of their flying theaters are specifically themed to the province that they're in. So, Guangzhou, which we do, we did one in, of course, Jiangsu.
Mm-hmm.
We've done the one that's now closed, unfortunately, that was flying over Sichuan. What else did we do? We've done like all of them, haven't we?
Yeah, I think you just nailed.
Well, we never did the Nanchang one, and there was not one in Hefei and Nanchang. I don't think. Either way, they're good. If you do a Sunac one that has one, they're good.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it for Sunac Land. And then in the same city, on the same metro system, you have a Fantawild Oriental Heritage in Jinan. So most people would think when you look at RCDB, like, oh, I'm going to go for the wooden coaster because they have a Jungle Trailblaze with inversion, a copy of the Ningbo layout. And this one is situated super nicely on like waterways. And when you walk through the park, you see pretty much like a giant wooden corkscrew in the middle of the park, in the middle of the water. Really cool. However, it wasn't running. It hasn't been running, as far as we know, for like a couple months at least.
Roller Coaster Database says that it's been SPNO since September. So that was,
but then
that was part of what was able to give us a full day at Kwanchang Euro Park, was the fact that we were able to cram this into our Jinan Sunac day, even though the parks are like kind of separate from each other. Because we just knew, like, we'd get in there and like, well, we have like one looping, we have Stress Express and the indoor mine train, and then like maybe a kiddie coaster. This park technically has 6 coasters, but it only looks that attractive on paper. Once you look closer, you're like, okay, one's SBNO, 2 of them are teeny tiny kiddie coasters that like adults probably aren't allowed to ride. One of the kiddie coasters, which was actually kind of a highlight for me, is like this knockoff Tivoli style kiddie coaster, like the old Tivoli Zero style coaster, but with like a kind of a goofy, like little random layout. And then Stress Express, we normally love our Vekoma boomerangs, our MK1212 boomerangs, but this one wasn't running that well. There weren't a lot of people there, and they were sending out the trains like half empty, and it kind of felt like it had like a shuttle, a shuffle to it. So really,
of all the Stress Expresses we rode, this was
my least
favorite.
5 of them now. This one was like by far the worst.
6, yeah.
But the Night Rescue indoor Jinma Rides Mine Train coaster, which was a clone of the same ride at the Ningbo Park. This park had a roster that's very similar to the Oriental Heritage Ningbo. Almost like all 3 of the major
really
coasters
similar,
are identical.
Like almost the same.
But this one,
even a dark ride lineup.
The effects, the dark ride effects on this Night Rescue, which is like just an enclosed Jinma knockoff of the standard 2-lift to Vekoma mine train, they actually worked. The effects actually kind of worked. So we rode that a couple times.
Yeah, so I want to give that a little bit of a focus, because Night Rescue is actually, this one ran okay, not great. Mm-hmm. No, actually it didn't run well at all. Was this the one that ran so bad?
It was. No, I think that was a different night. There's so many.
Okay,
this one actually ran okay and had decent, and the theme elements worked. Like we filmed this one.
The theming was working great.
Yeah.
Which so there's always these subscriptions on the Fantawild app, which for the record, the Fantawild apps are incredible. Funkday, Fantawild app, the mini apps, use it, download it. The wait times are accurate. The operating hours are incredibly accurate. Everything's super accurate. So, but there's always a description of the ride, and the description is always like, oh, travel to the underworld because this character is saving his mother. It's like this like historical, like this kind of like historical folklore story, right? But when we rode the one on Ningbo, nothing was working, so we didn't understand the story besides reading about it. Now this time around, the effects in the queue were kind of working, the station was really nice, and then the actual theme elements are working. So we went to the underworld, we went to this forest, there was fire at the end, like there was like a volcano eruption at the end, but an actual fire effect. It's actually really cool because they put this giant mine train in a building, and this time at least it served the purpose. It's where in other ones we've written, there's practically no effects working at all. Especially the one, was it in Wuhu, where like there was like really nothing working.
It was either Wuhu or Zhongsho. It was one of those that had one, and it was not. Now I can't remember. I'm trying.
No, because there was no Oriental Heritage in Juzhou.
Maybe it was Wuhu.
So it must have been Wuhu. Anyway, besides the point. So next up we rode Colorful Kingdom, which Colorful Kingdom is a dark ride kind of along the lines of a Small World ride that just takes place in China. China is the Colorful Kingdom, but you go through the different regions of China. And if you've listened to our previous episodes, we've mentioned it in more detail. The biggest takeaway is that the outfits and all the little characters on all the little puppets are all different, really specific to the heritage of that particular region. Now, none of them run particularly well. I remember this one being okay. Unfortunately, we've ridden so many rides since we've been to this park in our trip that I cannot exactly remember how it ran. I just remember it being okay and it being maybe one of the better ones. I would say 50% plus was actually working, which is a lot for these rides. I enjoy them. We try to ride them every time we go somewhere, but you can tell they kind of did away with this particular dark ride in the newer Oriental Heritage parks because they replaced it with similar dark rides but much higher quality.
It's like a little
really nice
storybook dark ride.
Now there's storybook dark rides, or it's still kind of Colorful Kingdom, but then it just has way nicer scenes and it uses more technology, and the ceilings are covered. Like they took this as inspiration for the newer set of rides. But the Colorful Kingdoms are the originals, and this park is very much an original Oriental Heritage. Everything it does, the scope, the size, the focus on shows and elaborate dark rides is a big aspect of this particular park, this particular generation of parks. Another ride that you'll find a lot at these parks is New Apaches the Sky, which is a Transformers, Spider-Man style dark ride. We've talked about it in full detail in previous episodes, but long story short, it's one of the best dark rides, I think, out there. It's just really high quality. It's quite long. It uses screens really nicely by jumping from screen to screen. And it's just a really solid ride. The subject matter will never be that interesting to me because it's very much like gods fighting over stuff, which just, happens a lot on Chinese dark rides, but it's still a good ride, and the theming for the queue and stuff is all very nice. This queue was particularly nice. I remember moving from room to room through like these grottos and stuff. It's a very nice ride, but definitely can't miss. If you ever see a New Apaches the Sky, which you will if you go to Oriental Heritage Park, definitely ride it. And then there was one more major ride that Alex can be better at describing than I can be.
So they have this ride at the Oriental Heritage Parks. It's like a boring Epcot style ride. It uses the same ride system as Universe of Energy back when people would do the 40-minute dark ride time commitment that was the Universe of Energy / Ellen's Energy Adventure. When we hear it's about the history of opera, Chinese opera. So it's called Opera Travelogue. It's our second time riding one of these. We rode, I think the first one we rode was in Ningbo, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because not every Oriental Heritage has this ride. But I think it's really cool. It's just like riding through a bunch of big scene vignettes that have really just performances of various sequences from various famous operas, but they're just like screens. I feel like the original concept for this ride system, like for this ride style, called for like live actors to perform some of these scenes, and then the screens would just be like the B mode for on the days that they didn't have actors for all of the scenes. And now it's just everything is a screen. I could be wrong, but I feel it has this vibe. It's been described in the apps, in the ride descriptions in the Fangti apps, as being like a combination of live and digital performances. So I feel like there's an inclination that there is live performance art that is no longer happening on these rides. But nevertheless, what's there is really great. It's just really cool. It's like a 25-minute ride, and it's just neat from like a Western perspective of riding this attraction that like we're really not the target audience for, and we're just kind of there like soaking up the local color. And then also just seeing a ride system like this being implemented. It's not a ride system that I think I never imagined I would see this anywhere in use, because it's very niche. Like it's super slow. It takes up a lot of space. And it's just, there's not a lot of rides that would like benefit from this sort of application, but for this one, it works. And it would work really well for a park that had really high attendance, but the Oriental Heritage parks all perform pretty far below, I think, their expected attendance.
Capacity.
Yeah,
because capacity for these parks is insane. Some of like the major show venues, the major rides like this, I mean, if they were doing the normal throughput on this stuff, they could handle Disney level crowds, which is insane. But I do appreciate rides like this because they're really unique. And time does pass suspiciously fast on this ride. You look at your watch, you're like, I've been on this ride for 20 minutes. You know, it's like this ride has taken 20 minutes already. You know, but so it's strangely still quite captivating and very Chinese. And like, this was the first one, right? That was the opera one. What was the other one that we did again?
Well, we did one that was like, actually did have live performance where it was on the boat. That was one that we did in Ningbo.
That's what it was.
But it had a similar scope to it, but a smaller ride portion, and then you like disembarked at a different station and then went to a theater like in the middle of the attraction and had like a very Universal Studios-esque like special effects.
This park did have that.
Yeah,
we
this park
walked
did
by
have
it, but we didn't do it.
We didn't
That's
have
right.
time.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. It's something called White Snake Lady, something.
Yeah.
If you see something about a white snake lady, that's the one you want to do.
Nuwa is also a white snake lady. So there's like the snake lady boat show attraction and the snake lady 3D dark ride attraction.
Let's focus on the 3D dark ride attraction.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's kind of it. What we did at the Oriental Heritage here in Jinan, and then there's also another Fantawild park in Tai'an, and that is Fantawild Adventure Tai'an. Now the Fantawild Adventure is like the early generation of Fantawild parks, so they're usually home to like a knockoff SLC, a knockoff Mine Train, and then a couple of other concept rides. Now, this was our first trip really going to the adventure parks, because I don't think we've been to adventure parks prior to this trip. We went to like 3 or 4 this trip, and I have a lot more appreciation for them now, because in our RCDB knowledge, I think I always looked at them like, oh, well, they got like 2 knockoff, fake Vekomas. That's it, But really, these parks introduced the concept of the Fantawilds in general, which is heavy concept parks with dark rides and simulator rides and themed areas, and then, a couple big coasters. And they were just, Chinese manufacturers. So there's a couple of dark rides we'll talk about and a couple of theater things. But we started our day at the park, which I will say looked quite nice from a distance, the park. You can tell that they've been working on the place. It was actually not a terrible place. It was not super nice, but it wasn't terrible. We started our day at Sky Pilot. Now, Sky Pilot is a flying theater. The flying theater is quite good. It's just like a more of a generic China flying theater. We were ushered to the flying theater because we didn't realize when we went into the park that the park was going to be so low attended that day. There was no school groups or anything there that day. That they were going to operate every single thing in such a way. It was really quite calculated. There was like these Fantawild tour guides. I'd only ever seen it at this park. There was these Fantawild tour guides. And so as you walked into the park, they would kind of tell you to which ride to go to first. So all the guests in the park were at the flying theater exactly at open. And then as soon as that was open, we were all ushered to the next attraction that we skipped.
Yeah.
So that way
the
we
Coral,
were the first
the little
to
dark ride
Meteor.
3D movie. Yeah.
And then after that, everyone was ushered to the next thing. And they were really trying to convince us to not keep walking into the park and just do whatever they told us to do. We were kind of had a mind of our own. And I think it took me maybe like an hour to realize that the reason they were doing that is because every single attraction was only running at certain times. And it was really clearly designed to move every group of guests from ride to ride. And they could do like sets of groups. So like the second group of people that would come in would also start a flying theater, but like half an hour after us. And they would move everyone from ride to ride. And honestly, I kind of appreciated it. It kind of worked. But yeah, Flare Meteor. Alex, you have any thoughts on the Jinma
this
SLC?
One was really bad. I mean, none of them are good.
This one was pretty bad.
This was our second Flare Meteor of the trip. The first one was in Tianjin, and I was not granted entry onto that one. Well, they tried their best, but I couldn't get the extra click I needed to dispatch because of the shape of my chest. But even though it's the same coaster, same park chain and stuff, this one I was able to get on, and they look cool. Was this the one that had just been repainted, or was that a different?
Yeah, this one it reopened that day from a repaint and a remodel. Everything was in good shape. It just didn't run that well.
Yeah, and it's like it was a reminder of why like you need to use a special certain type of paint if you're going to paint the road with the road rails and let the wheels roll on top of the paint, because it just felt like it just ran so bad for a ride that had just come up from being under maintenance for like maintaining the ride.
I don't know. I just think maybe like the rides are quite old already, and because they're early generation Fantawild parks.
Yeah.
Because we rode another one that was like similar recent repaint. They were working on it. It was all in really nice shape. It just didn't track well. And at this point, I personally believe that it's not Fantawild. It's just a ride. Yeah. It didn't run great. It wasn't super terrible. I thought that when we rode later in the trip, we'll talk about a different episode,
was worse.
It ran even worse. But it looked nice. It was really pretty.
It was fun to videotape. The mine train was down. It was in the middle. So a lot of parks in China built these like mine train coasters with like a mountain rockwork facade. But this park, a lot of parks go through the process of like demolishing the decorative rockwork. Everything has like a service life timestamp on it when it gets built. So like the coasters all have 20 years in China, and then after 20 years, they either need to be demolished or like heavily remodeled. And the theme elements on a lot of these like have like a 10-year timestamp. So halfway through the service life of these mine train coasters, they all like lose their mountain theming and just run around like the support beams. And like the one in Shanghai got like a different theme to accommodate the lack of the mountain.
Juzhou still has the mountain. The Mount Tanglus still have the mountain.
Yeah.
I think most Fantawild still do have the mountains,
Yeah.
but this one, the mountain was getting actively removed, right, when we were there?
Yeah. So we didn't ride it, obviously. It wasn't open. But we did enjoy they have an interesting collection of dark rides. Some of these
Very
dark
interesting.
rides you would only see at Fantawild Adventure or Fantawild Dreamland parks. And then some of them we have seen at Oriental Heritage parks. Like,
So,
go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
We wrote, so they have a Spider-Man style dark ride here called Dinosaur Panic, and it is very clearly, a lot of this stuff is inspired by Universal Studios. It's clear that that was where their eyes were cast when they were developing a lot of these, because they have a ride that uses the Spider-Man technology, but it's themed to dinosaurs. And it's actually a very scary and depressing ride where there's like these genetically modified dinosaurs, a la Jurassic Park, but they kind of take over the world and like usher in the end of humanity. And like there's this like end of like apocalypse event, and like everyone is pretty much dead at the end of it. And there's a lot of graphic imagery of like humans being ripped apart by dinosaurs and dinosaurs.
Or just falling to their deaths out of skyscrapers.
Yeah, there's like, it's really graphic.
Something about these Fantawild dark rides is just so graphic always.
Yeah, this
Even
was like
if
a
it's just
precursor
a
to the
dark ride.
Glorious Orient dark ride that are pretty violent. But this one was surprisingly violent considering like the tone. Like
The
all
only
these goofy
difference-
animatronic dinosaurs and stuff. You think like, oh, a goofy dinosaur ride, and you ride it, and it's like an R-rated level, like gruesomeness experience.
I will say the dark rides are generally really good quality. This was a pretty decent quality too, especially given its age. But there's just something about the early generations where I just feel like the story doesn't make any sense. Like even if I'm really focusing, they just kind of throw it all together. It's just like, oh, dinosaurs are ripping up the streets and we're shooting them, and maybe we're being told in Mandarin exactly what's going down. But for me, it always just kind of, this kind of just ended with the world blowing up, and that was it. And I was like, really, that was the point, right?
Yeah,
the point wasn't the dinosaurs. Like I was so lost
by the end of it. We also did a Back to the Future style motion simulator ride called Crazy Idioms. And it's just kind of like a tour through Chinese folklore hosted by some eccentric wizard guy. I don't know. It was fine.
It was fine, but I wouldn't ride it again.
It was mostly just interesting to see like a carbon copy of the Back to the Future / Simpsons ride system in place, where you enter the little corral that has your vehicle and it gets like lifted up into the big screen. And then the last thing we rode at this park was the Corgi Kiddie Coaster. Most of the Fantawild parks.
Oh my God. Before we move to that, I have to say that somehow my most vivid imagery and memory of this ride was that girl. Her mom just like took her outside. So the queue kind of goes from outside to inside. And I guess that before the ride, the child had to pee. So they just like peed in the outdoor queue, and I was like, what is going on?
Oh yeah, but that was Crazy Idioms. That's right.
Yeah, a puddle of pee, and then they just went to go ride the ride with us, and I was thinking to myself, what the hell just happened? Because that's the kind of stuff you hear about, but I've never actually seen it happen.
It's so crazy because it's like there's nobody in the park, there's no one in line. Just go to the bathroom.
I know, but I will say this ride ran like once an hour, so they had, it was now.
Oh yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah.
And then Alex already mentioned the Corgi Coaster, which
we did the Corgi coaster.
Coasters.
It's just a basic
this
wacky
was like
worm
a wacky worm one,
style
right?
coaster.
Drop.
Yeah, and then
much more comfortable though than a wacky worm. The trains are big.
It's actually, this really wasn't that big of a park. The one in Tianjin was larger. It had like a separate like midway loop. This one is just a single midway loop, and once you did the loop, you did the park. We went inside of their Disneyland Paris-esque style castle. And it was very sad and abandoned. And there was like
falling apart,
ceiling falling in. And it's like one part of it was open, and they were just showing Boonie Bear cartoons in like a big carpeted theater for little kids. And then part of it was like the lights are off, the ceiling is caving in. It's like, do you want people to see this or not?
Closed.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because in general, I would say that the park had some really nice areas.
Yeah,
they were
some nice
doing
areas.
some pretty good refurb, because even there's like a little Wild Western part that is by, I think, a Rapids ride.
In
that
between
is,
Flare Meteor and like the strip of science fiction
Dark
dark rides is this western area with like really nice, almost like a Knott's Berry Farm sort of vibe to it, with like water features and nice trees and
landscaping.
like,
Everything was painted
this
pink.
area is so nice compared to the rest of some of this park.
And then the corgi area was nice. Like you could tell that it's now, I think what we witnessed was just that they had kind of reached a point in the park's lifetime where the whole park was getting a refresh, because we witnessed this in a lot of Fantawild Adventure and Dreamland parks where they've reached a certain age where the whole park is getting a refurb, and we just happened to go there while it was happening, because then that 3D show theater thing was also undergoing complete refurb. They were doing the entire exterior. So I think that was just kind of the part of I think we just kind of, this was the part of this park's lifetime where it gets completely refurbed, because we've been to other adventures that felt completely refurbed already. Like the adventure that we went to in Juzhou was like really nice. Like that was completely refurbed already. So I think that it's good to know these parks eventually do get to a point where they're getting complete refreshes, because the Chinese regional theme park boom is so new still that we only recently saw the Happy Valley parks and OCT parks getting refurbs. Now we're seeing the first Fantawild Adventure parks getting complete refurbs. So it's nice to see that those parks do eventually get to a point where they no longer look dilapidated and do get complete refurbs. And then one more thing. Alex, what was that one thing?
I accidentally closed the window that had
okay. I'll talk about it. Yeah. So we went to Taishan. So Taishan is also known as Mount Tai in English. It's the largest, holiest, and holiest of the holy mountains in China. There's 5 holy mountains in China, and this one is particularly pilgrimagey. People are pilgrimaging. They climb the entire mountain. They spend the entire day climbing the entire mountain.
Here, I found it. I'm sorry.
When they get to the top, it's like, it's a rite of passage. It's a religious experience. Most of all of the emperors through all the dynasties went up Mount Tai to proclaim that they are the emperor. There's a lot of other historical significance to the mountain.
Confucius went up this mountain many times.
Yeah, so Confucianism is like, this is a big thing in Confucianism, yeah.
Shandong is like, Confucius is Shandong's most famous celebrity, I guess, for lack of a better word. His birthplace and his burial place are in Qufu, which is really close to the glorious Orient Park that we went to, which is in Jinan. But yeah, that was really one of the famous aspects of Mount Taishan, was that Confucius went there many times, and some of his most famous proverbs and things were written while he was up in the mountain peak. It's one of 6 original UNESCO World Heritage Sites in China. UNESCO didn't establish heritage sites in China until 1987, just because of like issues with the political climate. But once they were granted access and came to an agreement with the Chinese government in order to do this, they nominated 6 major landmarks to be the first of the Chinese World Heritage Sites. There's 60 now, but the original 6 include like the Great Wall of China, the Forbidden City, and Taishan is one of them. So it's regarded, it's not something that's super famous outside of China, but within China, it's regarded in the same breath as like the Forbidden City and the Great Wall of China. So
yeah,
very
I
significant.
think a lot of people may not realize that this is, like Alex said, incredibly Chinese. Like there is not many white tourists there. I think we saw like 2 or 3, and they were guided by a Chinese, a large group of Chinese people.
Friends.
Yeah, so I found that really fun, and a friend of mine, or a Chinese colleague, really said like, "Wow, you're like really Chinese for going to Mount Tai." And so, if you really want to do something really cultural that's really, really distinctly Chinese and that is historically really significant, and it's kind of not super Western, like overrun by Western tourists, which doesn't happen a whole lot, but definitely more places like the Great Wall. Definitely go and do a Mount Tai. I think it's worth it. You can take a cable car up. It's not like super strenuous like some of the other stuff we did in our trip. Worthy of a trip, especially if you wind up at Fantawild Adventure in Tai'an. You better go to this mountain as well.
If you're already in Jinan doing the parks, you might as well do a day trip to Tai'an and do exactly what we did. Half a day at the park, half a day at this mountain peak, and you can say that you visited the holiest mountain in China.
And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, then you might as well leave us 5-star review.
Also
That'd be
true.
really nice of you. Also true. All right, guys, this was yet another episode of our little China range of episodes. We're gonna have lots of other non-China episodes too. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys real soon. Bye.
Bye.